Okay, Duvid, we are live with the Crazy House World Championship here, and is about to get underway and be streaming. Let's make sure this is working. So looks like the game has not quite started. Okay, the sound is working. Like myself, and put it in the chat. So they're about to get off underway. I have put it out there. I don't really know these people. I played them a bunch of games. These guys are substantially better than me. Bughouse players. They say this one guy is from Finland, maybe a student in Canada, and currently the highest ranked Crazy House player. You see, I've played him 12 games. I won one game off of him. Chicken Cross the Road, I lost 10 games to. So these are from the top players, and here they go. You can see the standings. So hopefully it'll be more exciting. Like I did a video on the finisher style, and finisher is kind of a boring, low-risk player, and neither Jasugi nor Chicken Cross the Road are boring, low-risk players. So Chicken Cross the Road plays this A6, interesting kind of like waiting move, strategically. To the pin on the knight on C6 could be very annoying. I've seen him win with it before. It's got to be pretty annoying. I think I've lost to it a few times. It would appear to be kind of just a wasted move. And if you don't bring your bishop to B5, serve no value. But a lot of times you don't know whether you want to push your E or D pawn or what white's going to do. So it could just be a waiting move, give up an extra tempo. These are well-known lines. These two players have probably played each other in this exact variation before. I've seen this many times. There's ideas of putting a pawn on E6 right away. You can see these players have played close to 500 games against each other. It's likely that they've really played thousands and thousands of games against each other. They've had different accounts, and both of these players are basically Bughouse players. I like this game largely as mental exercise. Causes quite a bit of thinking. Likely that these players enjoy Bughouse, and they play this game largely to improve their Bughouse. And you'll see these players possibly also in the Bughouse World Championship, and they've played probably tens and tens of thousands of games of Bughouse, maybe even with each other. So this is a pretty well-known position. I'm not sure how much either of these players actually prep these openings. So he's putting a little bit of thought right there, and so D6. You might think he'd rather get the bishop out before playing that, and I guess he's determined. The threat of at E6 is serious enough. He can't get his bishop out first, and so this is pretty much a strong structural advantage for white. We'll see if he could convert it into a victory. I mean, he could really already sack at F7 if he wants. If he tries knight at E5, opening up the D file and a quick queen trade could be dangerous. I'm not booked in this opening to know the details of we can look at the computer analysis afterwards, but these are well-known theoretical lines that I'm sure both of these players have spent large amount of times thinking over generally. So you get the first game here, and let's look back at how that started, because they're playing kind of slow. So E4, Chicken Cross the Road plays A6, test them out, and then D4, D5 into this known opening. and he plays e6 here. There are other possibilities, and then c3 solidify the center. You get a sack on f7 and the knight, and so to say, all hell is broken loose here. So when it started out pretty boring with the at a6, now it's pretty exciting, but you'd have to assume this favors white strongly. So I just say that this knight takes pawn, and then going into this, one thing, it loses material for black. There's also an exchange, and the white looks more safe. There's like the permanent hole in f7. So he still has to convert this game, but from what happened, the a6 to creating an advantage in space, has led to an advantage in material, and just a positional structural advantage. All black has is a queen. Doesn't really have that many good moves. White has 4 pieces to place. Black really can't secure his structure here. With only a queen to place. So bring the bishop out. At least try to create some threats. Even like bishop h2 may not be that much of a threat, but if he does bishop takes knight, Jasugi might have a kill here. You might be able to finish him already, but it doesn't look like there's quite a finish here. So just, I guess, goes for the material. Obviously, if he takes with the knight, the queen on d8 is hanging, and if he takes with the queen, he takes back. It's looking like it's pretty much over. So he goes for the bishop sack, but what of it? He doesn't even take back, so he does the queen back. Now he could take the rook, the queen with check. Worst case, he could just play something at h3. Black does have a mate thread here, probably. May not even be a mating thread if you move the bishop back. But, presumably white, Jasugi will find a kill. Oh, Mugwort thinks that I'm not a good commentator. Yeah, I'll let Mugwort commentate if he's doing this. If Mugwort thinks that I'm suggesting moves that might benefit one of the players. Yeah, so this one is over. Yeah, they might have some like official rules, like when these players stream, they like do a delay. Yeah, so I was just mentioning ideas that they might be thinking of. Well, that was because my style of banter, but maybe I won't do that. But it's pretty exciting. The A6 line, which appears to just be poor, to some respect. I think I've lost to it, but you wouldn't think that 1A6 is going to be a very strong move. But Jasugi got the victory. He notched the victory off that. We'll see if he tries that again. So it could be that'll be the last time you see Chicken use 2A6. To reply A6. So here we have one of these French structures that comes through a declined Alekhine. And, this is one of the most common positions in Crazy House besides the E4, E5 Scots game. This is probably the you'd have to look at the opening book to see the numbers, but the extremely common position. And Jasugi goes for the sack and gets a piece for 2 pawns and brings his king out. The problem, partially, is that the black queenside bishop is blocked in. So there's not a whole lot of material to work with. Sometimes there's another variation where you could sack and bring a queen check out and win the material back. But you have the open queen, and so these are known positions. Like both of these players have probably seen these countless times. Bishop c5, very logical move, almost making it look like rook f1 was some sort of opening mistake. I have to look like it might have been an opening error, where it's supposed to go to e1 or something like that, and so now black has some pretty strong counterplay. My memory thinks that rook f1 was not the book move, but we'll see if he has anything here, because he's still sacked a piece. The heavies come off the bishops there, so I'm going to have to think this favors black quite a bit. That I'm trying not to give the ideas that he's thinking, because it's like an official live match. Although I don't think it matters, but obviously that's a mate in one thread. He can't bring the king back. He probably has to sack the queen here, if he runs. So this is looking pretty bad. Maybe he could regroup if he sacks the queen and still salvage something out of this. But it's unclear. So that's an idea. Obviously, making threats on f7 and attacking the queen. White only has 2 knights to work with here, but if he got the queen, obviously, that'd be an immediate mate threat. Black has a queen, knight, and 2 pawns. There's not too many great open squares. It could be there's a kill here. It could be Jasugi is going to be able to come up with some forced sequence here. I doubt it. Or at least some queen sacrifice that opens up a square for a forced sequence. He's probably looking for it, and if not, then he has to decide how to make his position safe. If he's going to try to save this queen and hand the move back, is bishop take f7 a serious threat, and how is he going to safety his position? So it's pretty interesting. So soccer players, can you 10-0 somebody? They're playing for your world champion. Basically these are from the best known players on the internet of this variant. So he decides to save his queen, and obviously he could sack on f2 right away. He could safely get his king back to g1. So this is looking favorable for white. Got to say that I believe that Chicken had misplayed this opening briefly, but Jasugi couldn't find the so to say correct way to finish it off, and now the tables have slanted back towards Chicken, but there's still a material deficit here. So if he can't immediately cash in on his advantage here, the material deficit remains, and maybe he could just try to run, try to save his queen and run his king back and see if Chicken runs out of material. He says that bishop is annoying, so he'll go for the 2 pieces. Maybe he thinks that if he takes the queen, then he takes the bishop back, then he'll be able to hide, get his king back into safety. All he has is a queen. Looks like the king is running in d8, and to hide, he's certainly that looks so he thinks he has a mate there. I guess bishop takes f2, or he's already sacked quite a bit of material now. So Jasugi had largely drained Chicken of material. A few moves back, He could have played a safe move here, but he goes in and he sacks the queen, and now he sacks the bishop, and what does he have? So I mean, he's got to go all in, and we'll see if he has a mate here. So like he's already basically sacked everything. So he just have. I mean, I guess he could take the queen, but he may not even be able to take the queen safely. So now with that bishop check, he could probably take the queen safely. So if he could get a few more checks and then take the queen, the game will probably go on. So, good find on Jasugi. So he takes the queen right away. And, I guess he could try to throw his rook down there. It's probably not leading to mate. So it makes the defensive move, knight, and now he could win the second queen. So now it's looking pretty good for Jasugi. I can assume he's going to be able to finish him off. Let me just, a text message came on my phone. Random stuff. So assume that Jasugi, so he finds a mate, he finishes him off. Just see if that was an opening mistake in this pretty well-known variation. So this position here, because it's been played hundreds of times. And so rook f1 here is a blunder, and bishop c5 is the reason. So we'll go immediately back to the game. But I'd seen that position before, and rook f1 is a very logical move to want to make. But the problem is it cuts the king off in squares. But that game went back and forth, and Chicken had his chances. So even though he made that opening error, and Jasugi appeared to know the proper response to it, he still couldn't finish him off in the attack. And maybe like Oki, he spends a long time going over these games with the computer analysis afterwards. And these are top players that have played tens of thousands of games and are likely to be calculating quite well. Within the computer recommended move, probably both of these players in the high 90% of calculation, along with so to say the stock best recommended move. But a lot of these variations, like the Finn, who likes to keep it low risk. So in like an attack line like this, I mean, Chicken just went, though he plays a6, then he decides just to sack a pawn back. And then, here, because the knight's off balance, he just decides to sack a piece. So a6 is a pretty unassuming move like that. But now already here, he's sacked quite a bit of material. And, just obviously, if he takes the pawn on d2, there's a fork on e4 that, so these pawn moves are probably the difference between, like if I get to like 2200, if you're 2400, 2600, 2800 level, but these, cute little pawn moves that find the pieces off balance. Also, the efficiency of the exact best square to put pieces like the queen on. But because pawns could go anywhere, and a lot of times you could off balance your opponent's pieces with a simple pawn move. It's one of the signatures of the top players is these like pawn moves, and so it's tough to tell. I think material's back to even. That pawn on d2 was able to even back the material, but white still has a substantial lead in development. The one a6 that he tried again. So Chicken Cross the Road, I believe, is in second place right now in the tournament. If you see the standings, it is extremely likely he's going to end up with second. And as of now, Jasugi has crushed everybody. Some 10-0, 7.5 to 2.5 was the least of his victories. So Chicken Cross the Road has, from the better chances of getting a few games off of him. One thing they've played a lot in the past, and you see that Chicken Cross the Road historically, gets one in 4 games, even 1 in 3 games against Jasugi. We'll see in the match how that goes, but to some extent, Chicken with A6 has been able to get a playable game out of the opening. I think in game 1, he didn't really get a playable game out of it, and Jasugi basically just won. Now, certainly Chicken has a better game. This looks pretty good for him, but may even be like almost has a finish off already. But I could be wrong, and Jasugi could be fine here. I doubt this is book, and I think Jasugi has a chance to defend. He's only down in exchange, but and he does have somewhat open on Chicken, but he's at least like 1 or 2 moves away. Like he could try like a knight at well, I won't say the moves and the ideas because I guess it's a live game, but Jasugi's attack is much slower. Chicken is immediate pressure. He could cash in on material right here. Presumably he has to take with the queen. He could have considered taking with the knight, but then that would have taken the defense away from f2, which obviously Chicken would not have taken the knight with the pawn. He would have taken the knight on f2. So Chicken immediately cashes in on some material. Looks like he's cashing in on even more material. If he takes the knight, very unlikely he will. The rook on e1 would hang, and Jasugi does have 3 pieces and 2 pawns. So you could just ignore the threat, and Chicken still just has a pawn and a queen. So even if he, you can't really do like a pawn mate, like pawns on the 7th file to queen. That's not quite the time to do this. So we'll see what Chicken comes up with. His time is ticking down, and obviously Jasugi could immediately be back in the game with his attack. He's got those 2 pawns and a rook already, so the threat on d7 is deadly. He has to block the threat on d7, and Jasugi decides to safeten up, taking the pawn on e3. He could probably just bring the rook back to e2. He decides to sack another rook. He's got a lot of pieces to place here, so he could just come up with some sort of pattern, some sort of defensive way to place a few pieces on the board, and he's got to be careful. He's got to find something here. He's probably okay, but we'll see which way he takes back here. He's only got 2 bishops, so this is looking really good for Jasugi now. He's just got a substantial material advantage. Chicken is unlikely to be able to place the pieces in some sort of way to keep him off balance, again and again. At this point already, he could probably play another piece on the board, and he doesn't even bother because, pawn taking on f7 is almost certainly leading to mate, and he doesn't take it, so just play on d7, and just the bishop check. He doesn't even have any material, drain him out of his rook, and hoard him in here. That and just the queen, because it forces the trade, and he could he's got a knight, so it's over. He's going to get another victory here. So Chicken had his chances. I would definitely have assumed that for a short period of time that Chicken was probably winning. So we'll see if he goes to a6 again. But so now Jasugi classic. This might transpose into a French. Yeah, so he offers the knight on f6, but once the bishop comes out and the pin on b5, that's the whole reason of the a6. The a lot of times you no longer offer the knight and bring it to e5 and e4, and it can transpose into a French. So this is pretty common position. So let's just look briefly at the last game, just to see how I think almost certainly he had to have had a huge advantage, like in this position where he gets here. So it's only like, it says bishop x c3 first. It may not have been that bad. Like he may have never been better than +10. So Chicken at no point had a finish there. He may have been as high as -10 for black there, which means he could have sustained a long-term better position. So, but he was able to get an advantage out of the opening with a6 that game. Even he didn't have a win there, but so he might try it again. So just see how this came to be. So you get this French setup, and so he decides to place both of his bishops on light squares on the queen side. Pretty obscure if you look at that. Like, I guess he could easily trade one or two of those bishops back, but to have both of those bishops there on the queen side on light squares, and then he places another piece on the queen side, because the nature of Crazy House is that usually you place the pieces near the king because you win by mate, and it doesn't always take a whole bunch of pieces. Sometimes only with like a piece and a pawn, if you could get exchanges, could lead to mate. You don't need to have like a whole bunch of pieces to checkmate. But this pin here is pretty nasty, and he only has knights. So this is probably book. Like Jasugi is probably still in prep here and knows this situation. Like there's no way he would naturally be placing like this. Is, you could tell, computer prep probably. That would be my guess. And maybe if he didn't actually do the computer prep himself, it's because he played someone else who did computer prep, because it's not the type move that your average human would think like, why am I going to place both of my bishops on light squares on the queen side when there's nothing going on there. So but now he could already move the knight, so I'm not sure. Maybe it wasn't book. Like you would assume he would have won the exchange. Then maybe he could just wait. But now that he's moved the knight, there's a gaping hole there. But I'm not sure if Jasugi got out of this what he was supposed to get out of that. Like, I actually am going to say I saw this position. No, I saw that you're saying Jasugi's playing the king d7. So interesting, I'm commenting on this. This is a crazy Arya line. And I actually was there when they played. Like I was in the Discord at the time when the man from Crazy Arya was there. And then Jasugi played a few games, and I'm pretty sure that Crazy Arya played this line. Let me put that in the regular chat. This is so Jasugi is the highest rated player largely because he's incorporated these computer lines, and we'll call it theory. If the computer says that this is a good continuation, and even though no human player would naturally think to do it, but the top players play the computer more and more because there's very little competition. I'm already almost from the 100 best at the game, and both of these players could basically beat me every game. So there's really only a handful of human players that could reasonably give these guys competition. and so they play the computer a lot. But from losing to the computer, just looking at computer analysis, you could learn interesting ideas. So we call it, theory, in a way where the Russian school, the old chess schools that had determined what are good structures, what are good ideas, um, doesn't really exist for Crazy House, Bug House. Obviously, both of these players also are from the best at Bug House, not just Crazy House. So this is a pretty theoretical position. There's only been one trade, and Black placed the extra piece on the queen side, and White has a knight to put on the board. So like White in theory here could play like knight at f6. It's a fork, and might actually be a good move. I mean, even Legion Destroyer in the chat mentioned it. Like just to win the exchange. But this is a very, and he goes for it. Material's material, and then he's just gonna have a pawn and a rook. So it's still pretty theoretical. Like what's he gonna do with that material? White, the pawn structure, it's a closed French. The pawn structure is a classic chess closed French. So he decides it's safer to sack the queen than to bring the rook back. So it's pretty interesting, and I'm sure Jasugi's probably played around with the computer quite a few times to have seen some of these ideas. But like I gotta say, this is probably favoring Chicken now. It's just the material advantage, and he doesn't really have an attack. Those bishops are really doing nothing to help towards an attack. So if he could create some sort of queen factory, it'll be over. But if he can't, then he could reclose it up. Like if somehow he closes back up the position, and it's funny if you bring the king up. That's what I was thinking. And it's going to time scramble, and the time scramble definitely favors Jasugi. I think Jasugi is exceptionally good at bullet, although Chicken Crossroad is close to as good as him at all these various forms. But the time scramble will presumably favor Jasugi, but this position is just not good. It's really unclear how he could unbind it here. He's got almost no time, so he's got to make a hole for his king, and so it's the pawn he could run. So even though he somehow managed to keep his position almost safe, he's just down too much material, and so Chicken gets a game, and it appeared that Jasugi played this crazy Arya line, and it's pretty interesting that he would try that. Why not? So Chicken does not play a6 this time, even though last time he was actually able to get a favorable position from it. But he might not have known that. And this is also straight up a computer like +4 for White, although it needs to be correctly played. A series of second or third best moves in the position is already even. So if you look at the computer analysis and it's already like +4, it means like White definitely should at least be winning a piece here already. But 2 or 3 second best moves, and the position could completely change. So here is the common motif of the sack in the center and the pawn fork, and so material is still even. But what is Jasugi going to do with the knight? Does he push it forward to g5, or does he have something else clever here to play, or is it like I said, that even though what looked to be a huge advantage for white has morphed into even game, but maybe this pawn is coming here on h6 right away. The queen's got to retreat, and so if black doesn't have something clever here, white will start the attack before black has any chance for counterplay. So just like a queen retreat, he could possibly bring the queen over to the king side. That may or may not be helpful. So this could just be winning already for white. I'm not sure. I don't know this opening that well. It looks pretty good. As I said, like sometimes all it takes is a few second or third best continuations, and it's even for black. And a bad move, black could already have the advantage. But white achieved the permanent damage there with a pawn on h6. His king is safe and castled. The black queen is out of play on the queen side. Material is still even. Black only has one pawn to place, so it's looking pretty good. It's almost like mating, but with the bishop on h8, pawn the king without a running square could be easier to mate. Obviously white has a lot of ideas here. Like white doesn't even need to sacrifice any material. Material is even here, so white could be looking for ways to feed material that doesn't require any sacrifices or exchange. And also you have the two black bishops pounding down on h3. I think that's extremely likely that at some point there's going to be a sacrifice on h3, but it might not have time. And the knight coming down on f6 with check, the other knight coming back, saying that now that bishop is defending the pawn and the knight is making a threat on f6 with check, that would allow for example a lot of mate threats with knights, rooks smothered. So Jasugi has just been able to keep on increasing the advantage that he was able to achieve by black giving the center, and it's looking pretty glim. But at the same time, material is still even, and like one foible here or a problematic dismissive retreat or something like that, and black could be right back in the game or have advantage. So now black is up a pawn, saying that problematic bishop that you didn't really want to leave on h8 because of you blocking the king's important running square is now, it's now gone. All he did was get a pawn for it, and it's looking close to over. But he doesn't have the material like knight. So he almost has to, knight at f6 was probably mating there. He had to do something, so he has to give up the queen, and there he just resigns because he can't even take the knight because at g7 would have been mate. So 4-1, half over. Chicken Across the Road did get a game. Jasugi attempted that crazy Arya line, so we'll see if he tries that again. And you're saying that's probably not his style. It was interesting for people following the game, people interested in the game, the advancement of the game, the current status of chess with like Alpha Zero, to look at a different style that's possibly actually better, from an objective view of if you looked at all of the possible moves you could play, all of the variations. So here you have, basically this is why I stopped playing, because like if you can't play bishop c5 here, the game's not so interesting because you can't really win quickly with black. So you play in arenas, it's fun to play and win quickly, but bishop c5 is really a problematic move. White could almost have a substantial advantage to winning But then if you play a defensive move like bishop e7, you end up defending all game, and that's no fun. So kind of like why you play. So here you get the classic e4, e5 Scots game with the book e7. There's a whole bunch of variations. A lot of times, like this d5 move comes in. A lot of times it's a sacrifice, because obviously it's only defended twice and it's attacked 3 times. So I'm not sure what's going on. If you do rook takes, what the plan is. So chicken goes in with a sack on f7 more so. So Jasugi does a pawn sacrifice to open up the bishop, and chicken cross the road accepts the pawn sacrifice and does a counter sacrifice on f7. The problem for Jasugi was the pin on the rook, and he only had knights. So Jasugi just sacks the queen, to solve his problems there, so to say, and go straight for a counterattack. Although, it's probably not enough. I mean, he can't even, rook back, let alone he could do like, take the on e7, but it's probably a forced mate. So he probably has to bring his bishop back or place a piece, and he may be able to sack the queen here. In fact, he may have to sack the queen here. If he doesn't sack the queen here, it's a question: how is he going to make advancement? And then the knight check and the bishop out attacking the queen could be powerful. So he might have to go all in with queen x f7. This could be book. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is still book, if Jasugi has even had this exact position before, or has studied this position with the computer analysis and knows the best ideas here to go for. So if you're looking, if chicken is out of book already, and he's considering whether queen x f7 is going to, what it's going to lead to, he's going to be in a world of hurt, because he's probably not going to be able to calculate it out, and he's going to go down in all his time. And so if in his own head thought process he's like going through this calculation, then what else could he do? So so we'll see if the natural conclusion of the problem for Jasugi is he doesn't have blocking material. He only has knights and a pawn. So I guess he has to run the pawn up. He could still get to the queen side. So he's still he could even try to draw out the material. Like if he goes to d8, forcing him to play the rook is a strategy, or he could just go up, and then if he plays the pawn, then he's got to run up, or he could still sack the knight. Yeah, so this is a finessing move, and so he takes one knight there. So he decides not to play the rook at e8. That may not be the best use of his rook. So Jasugi basically has to go for that check. But at this point now, the rook there could be quite dangerous. So Jasugi could be in substantial danger here. Like he could try. Yeah, like he could try bringing his bishop out. He's probably looking at a few possibilities, like his bishop to h3, h6 just be. So here he brings the knight back, and now he could still try rook at e8, but it may just not be enough. Like where's his next check? And if he places at e6, and at least he sacks his knight, he could get to the queen side, but then the immediate threat on So he's got to decide, does he have to place his pawn, or could he have ran up? I'm not sure what would have happened if he ran to d6. It may or may not have been a forced mate. So now he should be able to, either d6 or c6. So I guess he figured if he went to force an extra move out of him, or the queen possibility. So this looks pretty good for chicken, and saying that even, yeah, I think that's just made in one. Oh no, he doesn't have a. Well, so chicken gets another game. So chicken, the number 2 player is, see if he does better against Jasugi than anybody else. So 2.5 out of 10 is the most in the series that anyone's got off him. And then obviously, the winner's got to play Opperwiesen, who was the current world champion. That so he goes back to a6 at this point, and we get the same line with kind of the aggressive. It's not really aggressive, but the d5, and then if he goes knight e5, you have kind of this French structure, or we've seen these sacks on f2. So from here, you're seeing chicken kind of putting himself into a position where he has to sacrifice to have play as black. So in game 1, he really didn't get any counterplay and just lost. In game 3, he got some counterplay they had to sack for, and then he actually ended up material but couldn't finish it off and lost the game. In game 5, he played a modern defense, a knight, a fianchetto. So here we get the a6 line again. He didn't do the knight to a sack on f2, and so now he retreats and brings his knight back. So this is probably also book. There might be e6 lines. I think he could immediate play like knight f4. So this looks pretty odd. There might be play like, I guess the knight is defending d4. So if it moves into f4, that's the weakness of the left's move, the defense of d4. I mean, this looks pretty good for white. So he goes straight in the f4, and he takes on d4, I guess, giving up the bishop. So that was the idea, giving up the bishop, and I don't know what happens if he just takes the bishop. His development looks really slow. I mean, if he does the pawn on c2, so now he's down material, and I don't see anything. I gotta say, he could just place a bishop at f2, pretty safe, and defending the possible threat of queen at h4, picking up the knight, or forcing the knight back and threatening on d5. It looks extremely good for white here. I mean, you could even do a queenside check to defend c2. And I guess at c2 wasn't even a threat because he had the queen check. Yeah, so just brings the queen out with the check, force the knight back, and then you just up a ton of material. I mean, you could just do like bishop at, he could do anything. He could do something to solidify his structure. He's up material and development. Just castle or something like that. We'll see what he does. So just bishop defends the queen from coming out, and defends the pawn on e4, even though it was pinned. It wasn't under direct threat because the knight was pinned. I mean, I assume the knight is going to end up on e4, and f6 is already powerful threat. So this is looking painful. Just look like no counterplay. So you see in the A6 variation, game 3, Chicken sacked the piece, and he actually got compensation, a pretty good game doing it, but that was probably because Jasugi made second and third best moves. This game, he really just has nothing. He's down material. His position is worse. I mean, Jasugi just brings his king up. Even though his king is semi-open, so you're like, he could control the flow of material. You're playing an arena. You want to play safely, like finisher safe. You wouldn't play like this. The finisher might make play like this, but if he had to, but just like unnecessary risk. But in this situation, it's very low risk for Jasugi here because he only has a pawn to work with. His pieces are just cramped. He can't do anything. I mean, he could play like at G6 just to kick that knight, so he could try to get his bishop out. Yeah, I mean, so he could just kind of slow play it here, although a little bit risky. So that like something could happen. He looks pretty safe. Like it's almost like a Zugzwang. Like it doesn't really look like he could safely do anything. He can't like push a C or B pawns. Pushing the pawn there. Obviously, if he does pawn takes pawn, he could push D3, and there'll be a queen trade, and maybe there's something there. So he goes into it, and like rook D8. The bishop's on it, and king takes bishop to get material back that he'd probably already be mated. So knight takes. He doesn't even really have a threat that where he's going to put the queen down. So Jasugi isn't saying, he's not like he's gonna. I mean, actually at D7 is checkmate threat. So placing something at D7 is literally checkmate. So this looks pretty much over, although it's unclear. Saying like if at D7 and the queen trade and getting the king up, he doesn't have the other knight to check him with. So time's ticking down here. He just does safe with the bishop. So you say like it was a high risk move. So here that Jasugi saying that that's not the finisher's low risk style. That was relatively unnecessarily high risk, and now he loses the bishop with check. So at least he was able to get some material back. So it was unnecessarily high risk. But Jasugi's still up on time and faring better. Looking at the time, the time scramble, he probably, he could do knight f6 already. Probably not. Like it's not too early, but he's got to. How does he safe his king up here? He put himself into a bind for no reason. So he's got to sack more material. The horde strategy here, it's just probably not enough. He just takes the pawn and he has nothing. I mean, he could get one more knight, but it's just not enough. Although he gets a rook, but so the game goes on, and now so he just takes the knight. He probably could have done at D6, which would have been powerful. So this is basically Zugzwang over. That's even mate knight at F. He didn't have any material to block, but that it was even going to be mate knight at F6 there, and the take back. So 7 games here. 3 more to go. So at best, Chicken could tie up the game. I guess you got Jasugi's buddy Katask there, who he was probably, so to say, his main study partner, at least the method that they play very quick games, and they're likely have played tens, hundreds of games, in many of these variations. So when you're looking at a position 10 moves out that a lot of people would be far beyond their opening prep, these guys may have even played hundreds of games, even thousands of games in some of those variations, and know many of these mates out to like 20 moves. You're saying like these guys have, I mean, Jasugi probably has tens of thousands of traps for you. Even Chicken Cross the Road might have over 10,000 traps set. Like I have thousands of traps set for you. So even if a person's a titled player and they're new to the game, like I know thousands of traps that a person is very likely to fall into have a difficult time figuring out over the board. So Jasugi has probably tens of thousands of traps prepared, and a lot of mates in opening variations out to over 20 moves. Chicken Cross the Road, definitely some. They're both Bughouse players also, so they know basically the best strategy to open positions if you have the material. So in the Crazy House, the sack sitting, you need to have an exact calculation for how you're going to fill back up your material, unlike Bughouse. But the pattern for how to open up areas of the board with given patterns of material, probably a lot of that is crossover from Bughouse to Crazy House. That the motifs that they're using are motifs that they've used in Bughouse, and they're using those now in Crazy House. So this gives the creativity of their play, but also I guess what they call sack sitting, where would be going into attacks where you can't feed your own material. If you were sitting there begging your partner for more material, it's like just a little bit more material and I'll finish them off. And maybe your partner can do it, maybe they can't. And so in Crazy House, you have to feed your own material, and a lot of times that has to be preparation. You can know the motifs, so there's thousands of motifs that even expert players. So Jasugi has thousands and thousands of motifs that I've never thought of before. Let alone the thousands of motifs that I know that your average player hasn't thought of before. There's a handful of those that he probably doesn't know. He probably knows 90% of the motifs that I know that other players don't usually know. And even if I got him on the board, it may not be enough to finish him off, or he'd come back, or that's why I was able to get a game off of him, because even though he knows tens of thousands of motifs, I know thousands of motifs, and the same for any of these other players. So Chicken's from a top player, and he knows all of the major openings, at least the one he plays, the strategy, and so he kind of ground Jasugi here. He didn't take the knight, then he brought it in, and then Jasugi didn't sack, so he plays f3, and he gets this uncomfortable knight there to eventually lose the pawn. And so the question, I mean, he does, like, what does he have anything here? Is like knight at g3, anything? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And so if knight at g3 is something here, or maybe it's could be a draw by repetition. And I guess at the same time, he doesn't have any material. So like, he decides, knight will be powerful. So just queen takes knight. I was mentioning the obvious knight at g3 idea, which didn't appear to do anything. So he's like, if I had another knight to place there, but his queen is there. And this could be like book. It may not be an exact game that he's had before, but it could basically be book. So I mean, the question, does he take with the queen first or the knight? So if he takes with the knight first, he even take with the pawn. So I don't know. I mean, if he takes with the knight, then he's only got a pawn left. Like his material's almost completely. I mean, he's sacked. He's down basically a queen for nothing. Yes, I mean, what happens if he just goes to G1? So he just goes to G1, and all he has is a pawn, and he's down a full 2 queens. Because when you lose a queen, so he's got the queen on the board and another queen to place, and it doesn't look good. Like, I don't see it. Maybe there was something there. The queen takes knight looked interesting, so I guess he goes for the knight. I mean, you gotta see, like, his king is somewhat safe, so at least like the solitude, the conciliation for Jasugi here is that his king is relatively safe. So try to feed a tiny bit of material, and we could even do something like bishop f5 or something. Just the material. But I mean, he goes for it. But maybe so I mean, he's in desperate need of material, and I said he could have played a slow move like bishop f5, but he decides to try to win back material, just do the fork. Obviously, the rook comes with check, so if he did queen takes bishop, would have came with check. Maybe he's looking at queen at f7 as a mating attack. I'm not sure if that's even mating. I don't think so. So, what's he going to do? I mean, you try something like pushing the pawn. Obviously, so he goes for the queen sack. I'm not sure that that he can't just run. That way. So now he does have 4 knights here, though. So use the pawn. So I mean, he's got now knight checks, basically the only check left. He does the queen. So interesting idea. Did the queen like that, but now the king could run back the other way, or can it? So it's confusing here. So we had like a full queen up for chicken cross the road, and now there's been a complete reversal of fortune, and now Jasugi is up the ton of material, and he has to finish him off mate. Although I think this is going to be mate. It looks like, maybe not. No, that's looks like mate. Pawn there. No, maybe he's running back the other way. Like you got to assume, yeah. So he did have a mate there. So Chicken found the mate. That was a pretty exciting game. You could look more analysis. I'm not sure I'll go into too much analysis after this, like Oki does. But those were probably pretty exciting finishes off with a lot of possibilities and a lot of variations that you may have been forced, and could have been like a mate in 10 there, and you found a variation. So it's a type interesting thing why Crazy House is fun, and it's why I play Crazy House largely is the mental exercise, because it extends the mind and calculation much more than chess in a way that is different. So I get actual enjoyment out of playing this. As where chess, I don't really get any enjoyment out of playing it. I could play it if I had to. I coach it, I teach it. It's a good game. Largely, I coach chess as a way to do good deeds. Some way to have impact, because I'm not. Your 2,000 ranked player is still good enough to coach most kids, and in my area, it's pretty high ranked. So enough I have impact as a coach. But I admit I don't really even enjoy chess. Like, I don't even enjoy playing it. Crazy House I enjoy playing. Some of the variants. I might do a stream on Racing Kings. It's a pretty interesting variant. In fact, I joined the Israeli team now. I'm playing for Israel. So you might see some Racing King streams. So this is probably going to be the most exciting match. Maybe there's a GSVC versus Jasugi. So Chicken has got more games off Jasugi than anybody else. This is 3 games. Jasugi has not even won the match yet. Jasugi has not lost with white. Here we get another A6 opening, and Jasugi just slow playing, taking the tempo, taking the space. This time, at least Chicken Cross the Road was able to get his bishop outside of his structure. So in this case, at least his bishop is not trapped within inside. So Jasugi just slow playing. Like, can he really even make any threats? Does exchanging that bishop for the knight even help him? Because then obviously the knight could go right back on h4, closer to the attack. The knight's not really doing anything there. So it's question whether that move, how good that move was. But, was there anything better? Because he doesn't even need to let him take it to refresh. He could just bring the knight around because, this was Jasugi played the crazy Arya line with the white squared bishops. But, so just a little motif here, sack on h2, replace right there on e4, get the piece back. Did that benefit him? And, so now we've had a few trades, a little imbalance. Chicken had that motif on taking on h2, and so these are all pretty common positions. That's not really a threat. The knight is defending d3, and Chicken is now out of material. So he just goes in for the attack on g7, weakness on f6. Always the idea in white for the French there, that knight on h4, h5, attacking g7, holding up a possible double knight drop, forks on f6. So, he goes straight in. The rook was there to capture the needed knight. So he just goes in, and then, he returns the favor with the pawn fork. And this time, like if he double takes in with the queen's just going to get hit. So this is looking really bad for Chicken. Material here is even. Jasugi is down a full rook here, but he's about to get something back. The position right now, Jasugi is down a full rook for a pawn. So he gets the piece back. He has this gaping hole. He could do a knight fork and win the rook. He could place a bishop there, pawn there. He could slow play. Saying this is looking extremely good. Like bishop on f6 basically wins the queen because rook on h8 is a mate threat, and now material, he's just down 2 queens. So he just resigns. So Jasugi gets the match 6-3. We'll see that Chicken has won his whites. Jasugi has not been able to successfully get good games with black against Chicken. Chicken knows his opening theory. In this basic e4, Jasugi's knight f6 hasn't been working. Honestly, Chicken's been doing some of the same things. So ironically, Chicken has almost the same position, except Chicken's playing a6, and so the bishop doesn't get on b5. And because Jasugi didn't play a6, Chicken is playing his bishop right to b5. So you're getting kind of the flip in the games where Chicken plays a6 and Jasugi doesn't play a6, but then because of that, he plays his bishop to b5. So last time, he was able to kick the knight with f3 and just make it look stupid and spank him. So Jasugi goes. I think this is the king d7 is the crazy Arya move. This one also Stockfish recommended. This basic strategy, maybe someone figured out over the board. But last time he didn't take the knight. So like at a certain point, the last time they had this game, whether it was game 6, Jasugi at some point could have won the exchange, and he didn't. And then Chicken got knight to f4, and those bishops, just didn't prove any value the rest of the game, and he was able to grind them by just winning the pawns and the material on the king side, even though his king found temporary safety on the king side. I'm sorry, that was game four that they played that line. So what is he going to bring? I mean, he can't even bring the knight back to g5. Last time he played d6, so his queen was at least defending. So he can't even bring the knight back to g5. So I guess he has knight at g3 for the fork. So that's the idea. And I forget if we had this position already, this opening position already. But I mean, this is a common idea. So he still has this bad bishop there, but he could already start playing like e5, e4. So now Chicken has 4 pieces to place. And he basically has 4 pieces per rook. So the material balance, 4 pieces per rook and 2 pawns. So that's actually even point material. No, I'm sorry. I mean, it's a 5 points plus, so it's plus 5 points for Chicken. Although the attack on Chicken's king is much more immediate than the attack on Jasugi. So he goes for the knight at h5, obvious strategy, and that may have been a mistake. He probably should have defended the king. So I think that knight at h5 may have been the last mistake, fatal mistake of this match, and Jasugi will be able to put it away. The problem is he has multiple threats that probably lead to mate, like at f2, at h2, rook at h1. There's a lot of threats here, and there's no real way to cover them all up. That if he tries like so, yeah, I guess he could run. So now he still has at h2 and then placing the rook on g1, but yeah, so I guess if he had done knight takes rook, he could have done queen takes knight and then place the knight back at g3 and win the queen. And I guess his king was still safe with the bishop there. So he takes the pawn on d4, bishop there, takes the queen with check. I'm not sure if he's going to take with the knight or king. So, definitely the queen could go in. So the material is still, ironically, pretty even, although, he didn't have a good square for that. So, we recognize that Chicken didn't have any material to block with. So, that weakness of the last move of, it's almost like mate, but not quite like knight at h2. The king could come up. So Jasugi has a lot of time here. You got to assume that there's a finishing blow, but there may not be. Saying if there's not, Chicken doesn't have any material. You could, consider like queen x rook and then taking the knight on h4 or something, or you could just play like queen x c2. That that he actually has no material. So like he's got a minute and a half time advantage here. And he can even slow move it. So just saying that's mate. If he takes the rook, the queen on d1, that's going to lead to mate. Yeah, so like I said, he doesn't have any material, so he just plays a slow move. Now he's got some pawns. So if he can't attack the queens, that's a powerful threat. He could just rinse and repeat and gain material here. And just the bishop. I don't know why B5 was probably better just to cover D7, but Jasugi had such a winning game there. But almost definitely playing the bishop at B5 would have been better to defend. And it looks like all she wrote. What's he even going to do? He takes the queen, takes the rook, and so bishop would have been better at B5 there, obviously, but at this point it doesn't even matter. But just looking at obviously placing at D7 didn't lead to anything anyways, and just win the material. Is that not quite yet mate? Still got to find the mate. He's got a whole full minute advantage. You could just do anything, but the time advantage is so huge here. Also, it's it is over, and there you go. Jasugi wins 7-3. Chicken Cross the Road has the best record there with winning 3 games against Jasugi. That will bring Jasugi to 75.5. Chicken Cross the Road to 66. So Jasugi is unquestionably going to be the winner. Chicken Cross the Road will have finished all of his matches. It is with inconceivability that Bugzilla would be able to catch up to him. He would need 22 out of 30 points. But Bugzilla's got King Switcher, Master Tan, and Penguin, so it's remotely possible that Bugzilla could come and get second. In fact, maybe it's not even remotely possible. It could be that Bugzilla even has semi-decent chances of coming back and getting second. So I wouldn't count that out. And I'll put the Google spreadsheet in the chat. So so the finisher, he's got 50 games left. So conceivably he could come back for see the win percent here. GSBC has a very high win percent, but he still has to play Jasugi, Mugwort, and the finisher. So GSBC is a contender for second. He's got a lot of games left to play. So we see what happens over there. So good game, guys. Jasugi, Chicken, I think both of these guys are young, maybe mid-early 20s or even late teens. So the nature of chess, I showed that study on Week in Review the other day that the mind generally peaks from like 35 to 45. But for quick games and like this, it peaks much earlier. I've been playing with Jasugi99 on Racing Kings, and you see my profile. I lost some points. I still got the Horde crown. I'm getting there in Racing Kings. I'm 103rd. I almost got the crown in Racing Kings. I joined the Israeli chess team with Jonathan, who's I guess just a 10-year-old kid, but he's one of the best at Racing Kings. So a lot of times, like math competitions, memory competitions, you'll find young kids that could perform just as well as better at adults. And there's actually some reasons why younger kids have a cleaner, fresher mind to concentrate on something that's relatively simple. So Racing Kings has less pieces and a simpler strategy. Crazy House is more complicated than even regular chess, more possibilities. Racing King has much less possibilities. So from that perspective, Crazy House is probably the most complicated of the variants. It's the most supreme of the variants. So let me just show a little bit of the complexity of some of these games. I got 10 people watching, so and when they're in the chat, is there any way you can learn those ZF motifs besides playing? Oki has on his channel a bunch of studies. So, if you know the player Oki, he's the regular streamer, but he's in London, so that's why he's not streaming now. It's probably like 3 in the morning. Mugwort was around, like he's in Australia. I didn't expect him to be there. That's why I figure I would do it. But Oki has 155 studies, and included in those studies are series, highlights, mate. Some of them are basic motifs like the back rank mates. You have mating combos that he has. So these are good motifs, back rank mates, and so some of these went through. So Oki as of now has the best material. Oki's only, so to say, an average. I mean, he's a top 200 player. So Duvid right now is ranked higher than Oki. So he's got the best material out there. If you're trying to get like over 2200, you'll probably need help more than Oki's, but like up to 2000, Oki is probably the best material out there. Even up to 2200, you could watch my streams. They're not really teaching ones. That's why I thought I'd do this video, just commentary, to look at some of these more complicated styles. Like, since I got 9 people here, I'll do a little computer analysis of the first game. So the A6 computer. So if you look at A6 here, Black does decent with it. D4 is the main line, but Black is getting a pretty high win percent, and it's probably because only very strong players play A6. That your average player would never think to play A6. I mean, some people do maybe because they see the stronger players. And even here at D5, Black wins the majority of the game. The computer obviously is +3, but at this point, probably due to the mismatch in strength, where it's only higher rated players that seriously play this opening. And EXD5 is the computer recommended move, at least for Stockfish. And this position is already said close to even. And so here the computer is kind of saying it's close to even. So here I was mentioning, like H6, Queen D5, the different lines that are playable, and it might already be these guys that have played each other. So if you see, Jasugi has played this position with Black even. So you're saying, like I was saying, like these guys know this is only move 6. This is a complicated opening. So and there's a lot of ideas behind it. And eventually, Jasugi went in, and then here you have this idea here. So this was the first time this had been played, and Jasugi, I guess, is 12 team, and he had even had this position as Black, and before, and then there's other games where, so saying Jasugi was still in book here, and he probably knew the best response. So here, this move, pawn takes F3. That's the second recommended move, and takes the rook, definitely not the queen. For the attacking, to have the pawn defended and continue the attack. And FXG2, I guess you has to go for it. F7. And so you see, possibly he doesn't find the best moves, but even here with the queen sack and then the castle, he's pretty safe. And so that one was just kind of a crush. So let's look at the next time where we saw that Jasugi this time played the more recommended move, EXD5, and then chicken sacks the pawn right back, and then ends up sacking the knight. And this move at D5, I mean, Jasugi probably, he knew the computer analysis. He knew that this was the best move. You could see that he's had this position for Black many times. He's had this, so he knew what this position was like to play with Black. Maybe he's even played it with White before, and still, if this was his prep, if he's still basically in his prep completely here, and so this move, Rook F2, Rook F1 is bad again. There was another game where Jasugi played this Rook F1. I think that was game 2. We look at that one. And this Rook F1 is a bad move. largely due to just this pawn here idea, or pawn there. But you know, the idea looks good. You know, rook f1, and then you're going to run the king. But black has moves here, and then he has to give the material back, and he's got a permanent structural advantage. And black has reasonable advantage. At this point, Jasugi top player, but he can't necessarily find the best defense, but he's still in the top 2 or 3 moves most games. And here, I guess this idea of doing knight takes pawn, he should have done it before placing the rook down. Because then, so if he does knight takes pawn here, then he's double defended on it. So he missed the order, and slowly he regroups and comes back. And maybe it was game 2. So you see that even Duvid could have conceivably beat Jasugi on the right right game, so to say. And you see that he makes basically an opening blunder. This right here, this is still the opening, and Jasugi makes an opening blunder that even Duvid knows. So here, ironically, black is just better here. So this position here, I'm saying chicken makes the opening blunder. So this version here, bringing the bishop back is bad according to the computer. Most people who do it lose. And then you just have that tactic there. Knight takes f2. And then, coupled with that, he should have done queen. So he had the knight check, and then knight. Yeah, so he just blunders, and almost comes back. It's interesting. So even a period here, pawn there wasn't the right move, and I think f1 is substantially better, and he ends up an interesting long game. So I'm not going to go over all these games. You could see the computer analysis, but just to show the the power of these guys' strength. Well, I'm doing the chess as I'm a chess coach. As I say, like, chess is somewhat a kid's game. This is the World Championship, and basically I'm doing it for a mental technique. I'm demonstrating a mental technique. I'm teaching a mental technique. Chess is the best way to do it. So chess in and of itself, just to be a better chess player to win, you would question the value. I teach chess as a brain game. Chess is a thinking skill. In general, that's why I play. That's why I coach. And actually, most kids that I coach never go on to play tournaments. Generally, I haven't recommended against playing in tournaments. So, like the hundreds and hundreds of kids I've taught to play chess, most of them never went on to play tournaments, and most of them I recommend to them not to go on to play tournaments. It's different when you're young and you need to compete, and you need just to prove yourself. Chess is a very good way to do it, and the nature of competition, what it means to win. But no, I'm trying to demonstrate a mental technique, and just say these are from the best players in the world, and just if you look at the sheer magnitude of so here Jasugi is white, and here you have e4. There's a million games on the server. Almost 60-70% of the games white plays e4. a6 is the 9th most common move, and actually has besides for knight f6, which is a pretty complicated move, the Alekhine, which a lot of stronger players play, and not sure if it's necessarily so much better. And say if white doesn't play knight c3, black's already has a much stronger win percent. But just say a6 here, that just to show that these players are in book at crazy how it's multiple moves out, and then you're looking at the combinations where you have tactical calculation skills. So if you're looking at like politics, so the general thinking skill of debate and analytical thinking. So like I've done these streams on my channel, and on chess, and like the tree thinking, where I did these videos on just go over in case anyone watches this and is interested, on expert performance, on the scientific evidence, on psychology, de Groot's thought and choice. I have more stuff I'm going to go through. Actually, I have like a whole bunch of more papers I'm going to read through on chess and intelligence, and chess and personality, and more evidence from the brain, and also AI. So I'm going to tie chess is going to be important for explaining my multiple truth hypothesis. Is one of the main reasons I'm playing chess. Actually, it's nice to be competitive. Like I did. Good eye. Hi, thanks for tuning in. But like, no, I don't really care who wins. There's not much money in it. Like we do chess as a spectacle here in Detroit. I enjoy coaching. It's a good deed. And a lot of those kids go on to university and be successful. I'm very happy of that. But a lot of kids go on to be competitive in chess. But the main reason I'm doing this is to go over these processes of the mind. So let me just show my speed reading video here. So this is my most favorite video, and I've talked to a few chess players right now that I've showed, but you're saying the general thinking technique of speed reading applied to chess and obtaining knowledge. So speed reading has the same concept of chunking, and this is actually a lot of these chess players, they probably actually speak German. But if these charts on speed reading, it's very similar to chess, where you have the supposed scientific idea that here's my memory curve. Also is going to be related to chess in your oh man, I forget the name of the memory curve. My memory is so off, I forgot the name of the sciences with the memory curve. But go over this a different time. But these speed reading, to say that experts say that you can't really speed read, that there's a curve, and as you go faster and faster, you lose the amount of comprehension. However, there's tested known exemptions of people that read faster and faster and do not lose comprehension, and they're listed as exemptions. They're known, they've been tested, and it has implications to theory of mind. And I did these other studies, like, so even here in the speed reading, you have these charts of eye patterns. So the top world champion player has these weird videos. I mean, he even took his video down on unusualchess.com. And so here are speed reader like concepts of chunking, where you have the eye patterns of someone who reads very quickly versus a normal reader, and how much time they spend on each part. And you have other eye fixation patterns, and it's actually the same for chess. And so my theory of consciousness is actually going to be dependent largely on decision making, how the mind goes about making decisions. And actually, I'm going to argue for a dualistic pattern. But historically, I've demonstrated on my channel with the studies, chess is one of the most studied things when it's involved to decision making, thinking, and intelligence. It's been studied for generations. It's an old game. It's always been popular among the elites, and the most intelligent, worldly people who wrote books, and we know about disproportionately were chess players. So we have a lot of evidence historically about what people thought about it, and till today, like 20% of people play chess. Like Duvid has taught thousands of kids, young kids in Detroit, chess. It's a known. It's a common thing. Saying like chess is like almost like math. I mean, it's not like math is a more useful skill than chess, but chess and cognition is a known thing, and so it's what I'm working with. Chess is my thing. So I could actually be competitive. So you could see, these are the top players in the world. they're substantially better than Duvid, but like I'm competitive somewhat. I'm up there, and so it can demonstrate my mental technique a little bit. And for debates also, it's a similar debate, like the idea of your whole gamut of possible moves you could play, main opening strategy. So Duvid is limited to e4, e5, and you get these variations where I don't want to play. I want to play bishop c5. I mean, here maybe it's okay, but get into these positions, and maybe there's better moves, maybe there's better setups. There's the computer, so there's a certain amount of memorization. You're just purely memorizing tens, hundreds of thousands of lines, and so okay, these players are top players. They have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of moves, combinations memorized. And there's motifs, there's patterns that are more useful that you could use. Just memorizing one move. Oh, if I ever see this opening again and I play this move as opposed to that move, give me an advantage. In a continuation versus like a motif that, like, if you're ever in this position, you could use this motif and open material or lead to mate. But most things memorized from these players aren't motifs. They're very simple ideas, and there have to be thousands and tens of thousands of them. So memory is extremely important for chess. And there's other things like within thought in general. It's a question whether there's anything more to thought than memory, period. So chess will be a good thing in how we go about making these decisions. So let's see, Mr. Griwan, peace. I'm from Detroit. I'm interested in doing chess coaching, teaching for youth and teens. I love and play chess, however, I'm not yet mastered chess. Any suggestion or tips for me aspiring? About 1,000 on chess.com. I mean, there's all sorts of material to learn chess. If you're Coach Fight, I work with, we have materials. There's the bookstore, All the King's Men have worked out of there. You can get books. There's tons of stuff on the internet. Chess.com is instructional videos. You could still teach chess only being 1,000. Most of like the coaches we work with are really actually only like 1,000 strength. You don't actually need to be exceptionally good at chess to just teach people how to play chess. You can even be 800. So if you're wondering how to get your own game better, there's a lot of streams like you could find me on Facebook, or there's a lot of people you could speak to. There's a lot of resources you could just pay. So I got to look into if there's a way I could try to direct this. I mean, like, we were trying to train teachers. I don't know what's happening. Our club's closed down. I don't know if like the schools, we were going to expand the chess programs, or like training like tens of new coaches in Detroit. I don't know if they're still meeting or doing what's going on with COVID-19. I guess if you want to give me your contact, I get a lot of trolling. I mean, so you could just email me. I'm Duvid at Hotmail or Gmail. So I'm Duvid on all my social media, Twitter, Discord. So any of those you could just message me, or so at Duvid at Gmail, Duvid at Hotmail, or if you use Twitter, you could message me on Twitter. I have a Discord. I'll put my Discord into the chat. I'm about to close the stream down. I'm about to put my Discord into the chat. But you might find someone better than me. If I'm the only person to reach out to, there's probably better people to reach out to. But I'll definitely help you to refer you to somebody. So I guess God bless everybody. Good work. Jasugi looks like he will be the one playing Opera Wiesen. I might stream that if it comes up. I like the game. I might stream myself playing, but I'm actually probably going to be playing less chess. I'm going to try to focus more on these presentations of intellectual material, because at the end of the day, there is diminishing returns to playing chess. You're saying you could teach chess. It's a good way to teach kids how to think, how to get ahead in life. But as an adult, chess is basically just a game. So it's like, why is an adult spending so much time playing games? So it's like, okay, well, I'm a coach. I use it as a pedagogic method to teach kids, or I'm advancing theories on, consciousness, to like, I'm just another, God forbid, like incel that's playing chess all day. So, we'll see what happens. God bless. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Shalom.